Welcome to Hear Me Out, where armchair quarterbacks become the experts. We're all just lifelong friends who love sports and love arguing about them. Make sure to tell us why we're right, why we're wrong, or why we're all morons in the comments below. Today we'll start by discussing should wins and losses be counted as a stat for quarterbacks the same way they are for pitchers in baseball. We'll start with you, Jesse, on this one.
Okay, so I think they absolutely wins and losses should be counted as a stat for quarterbacks. Maybe not in college, but at least in the National Football League, because what is the most important position in all of sports, any team sport in the world, Josh?
Quarterback in football.
It's the quarterback. So why shouldn't they get the credit for a win or credit for a loss? In baseball, you can only have impact on one side of the ball. What you throw to the batter, what your team does at the plate has nothing to do with you unless you're in the National League. You get one every 9 at bats. In football, you control the defensive side of the ball too, based on your time of possession, based on how well you get move the ball, based on how many first downs you can grab, based on how much clock you can eat, etc. You control the entire pace of the game when you are a quarterback in football. So the way I would do it is this: if you get the ball and you're down by one score or less with 3 minutes or less, and you end the game on your offensive possession, if you do not score a touchdown or a field goal or tie or take the lead, you get the loss. If you can take the lead in those 3 minutes, you get the win. If not, you get a no decision if that situation doesn't arise. That's it's more of a clutch win stat than just a win or loss stat, but that's how I feel. If you get the ball with 3 minutes or less, so it's a 2 minute offense essentially, that is 100%, 110% on the quarterback and the quarterback alone. You could game plan, you can, have your plays you run, your set 2 minute drill plays, but that's going to be 100% on the quarterback making the throws, not making mistakes, because you only have a handful of mistakes when you're in 2 minute drill offense, especially depending on what part of the field you're on. So if you get that ball with 3 minutes or less left and you're down a touchdown or less, you get a win or a loss depending on how well you do. If you tie the game, you get a no decision. That's my stance.
That's interesting. An interesting thought. I think what makes it tough, and we'll both agree that it's hard to directly compare baseball to football, but I think football is even more of a team sport than baseball. Obviously, baseball is a team sport, but there's a lot less depending on each other to do your job in baseball to be successful versus football. All 11 guys need to do their job on both sides of the ball or something's going to go wrong. So for a quarterback, the line may not be blocking well. Receivers could be dropping passes. You could throw a ball that hits a guy right between the numbers. It bounces off his hands. It gets picked off and you lose the game. And so I think that wins and losses is too hard to track as a stat for quarterbacks just because so many other people affect the game in addition to just him. I agree that he has a huge impact on the way the game goes and a bigger impact on the way the game goes than even a pitcher does in baseball. But there's too many variables that can be not his fault to just count wins and losses as a stat like that
So,
in my mind.
in any sport you take, there's going to be variables that are not your fault. LeBron James is 4-6 in the finals. 3 out of 4, the 4 or 5 out of 6 of those finals, you can make the strong case that it's not his fault. You can make the case that 2014 against the Spurs was his fault, 2011 against the Mavericks was his fault. Other than those, you can make the case that only those 2 finals are his fault. LeBron James on a basketball court doesn't have as much control over the game as a quarterback in football. The quarterback has audible, at least in the NFL, maybe not in college. They're young, they're not as trusted. Quarterbacks in football have override, they have audibles, they have route changes, they can move you around, they read the defense. You put a ball right on a receiver's hands, he bounces it off. Yeah, that's unlucky, but it's still the route that you chose for him to run. It's the route you chose to throw to. Everything was under your control. You got unlucky. I'm sorry, but everything about that is still under your control. If 75% of it is in the quarterback's control and 25% of it is not, that's not good enough for me. That 75% should count for the quarterback. And when you have guys like Dak Prescott, I know he's hurt right now, praying for him, hoping he comes back strong. But Dak Prescott is a garbage time quarterback. He falls behind by 44 points a game, whatever, tries to come back in the fourth quarter, racking up all these stats, all these touchdowns. None of it matters because he gets the loss every time. That's the most important stat, is whether he gets the win. Tom Brady doesn't always have the flashiest games, but he gets the win. If you give Tom Brady, if you applied this stat to NFL quarterbacks and you went back in Tom Brady's career and you looked at any time he touched that ball, they were down by 7 or less points in the fourth quarter, I guarantee you he has at least a 65% win rate, if not better. He gets it done, and that's what separates quarterbacks like Dak Prescott, who think they're worth a lot of money, and quarterbacks like Patrick Mahomes, who got it done in the Super Bowl, Tom Brady, who gets it done, Joe Flacco, who got it done in the playoffs. That's what separates those quarterbacks.
Yeah, I mean, that's fair. But at the same time, I think one of the biggest distinguishing factors between football and baseball is baseball is a very stat and number driven league. I mean, you can almost keep up with baseball not watching it as well as you can keep up with baseball while watching it because it's such a stat driven league. And football is not as much of a stat league. And so things like wins and losses falling squarely on the quarterback in the world of football don't even matter as much as it does for a pitcher anyway, because it's less of a stat driven league and it's so much more of a team sport.
But I'm not saying it's all entirely on the quarterback. I'm not saying if the quarterback starts the game, like in baseball, the pitcher starts, he gets a winner or loss or no decision. I'm not saying that. I'm saying in this one scenario is where they should get a winner or loss because this is the most important scenario for a quarterback to play.
Yeah, I mean
that's why you pay a quarterback. You pay a quarterback for these situations because you could have Le'Veon Bell, you could have LaDainian Tomlinson. They're not going to do anything for you in a 2-minute drill except ruin the clock.
Yeah, you're not wrong, but in my mind, you say the quarterback is there, and at the end, he gets the ball, last drive, marches down, he scores, he wins, like that scenario you're talking about, and now he gets the win because he won. Well, the team already won. He already got his win, so getting a quarterback win on top of his team win doesn't really do anything for anybody. And then say he throws an interception on that drive and they lose because of it, he still got his L. The team lost. So having a quarterback L and a team L, I mean, the team lost, so he knows he lost. I feel like he doesn't need another loss or need another win. If they win or they lose, they know they won or lost.
But this is
go ahead and start wrapping up your arguments.
Shut up.
All right. This isn't a stat for the people on the field. This is a stat that people.
Yeah, Jesse, I completely agree with you, man. You're making a strong argument here.
Yeah, okay. Right, thanks for watching. Hear Me Out, guys.
No, this is a stat that's for the guys like me and you that are going to sit on our couch and we're going to yell at each other about it. When you tell me Dak Prescott is a top 5 quarterback in the league, and then we can pull up and say like, okay, when he's in this scenario, he loses 70% of the time. How can you be a top quarterback and you want $40 million a year and you're going to sit here and lose with the game on the line? It's a separate stat. So in wins or losses for football teams, they're 16 a year. In quarterbacks, there's these scenarios come up maybe 4 or 5 times a year. And I want to know in a stat how well these quarterbacks are doing in that scenario.
In that context, I'll give you that one actually. As a more casual stat, one that's not held super stringently against the players. I think that's fair, actually. I would give you that one. Just like as we're talking right now, I think that's a fair stat to keep. It's a little hard to track it officially as a stat and not use it seriously, but I mean, I have no problem with it being a more casually kept stat.
It's going to be used by teams that are like analyzing players. I mean,
right.
Teams aren't going to pay a guy $40 million if he has a 10% win rate. But
yeah, I'll give you that.
I think, if I'm not mistaken, like game-winning drives is already a track stats for quarterback. You can look up any quarterbacks and check their game-winning statistic.
But
to me,
game-winning losses isn't. So that only tells you one aspect of it. That tells you whether or not they had a game-winning drive or not. It doesn't tell you if they had a chance and blew it.
Exactly. So I think that's just a small expansion on an already tracked statistic, and I actually think it would be a pretty dynamic thing to start tracking for quarterbacks and kind of hold them accountable for messing up at the end of games. But moving on to the next topic. We'll spend a few minutes discussing whether or not we think Patrick Mahomes will win more or less than 3 Super Bowls in his career. We'll start with you on this one, Josh.
So for me, this one's pretty cut and dry. We talked about it in the last episode, and we just talked about it, 10 minutes ago in this episode, about how the quarterback is the most important position in football and really all of sports. And Patrick Mahomes is the most talented quarterback in the league. And I haven't been watching football for the last 100 years.
So I'm sure Russell Wilson's face?
I will. Where's he at? We'll have Russell Wilson on the show, and I'll tell him to his face.
Okay.
Yeah, we actually have Russell Wilson coming on next week, guys. So look forward to that.
Yeah, look forward to that. Russell Wilson on the show. And I haven't been watching football for the last 100 years, so maybe some talented prospects, slipped through the cracks from before I was born. But, Mahomes is the most talented quarterback that I've ever seen in my lifetime. So I don't see any way where NFL teams are able to limit a quarterback as talented as he is, so that for the duration of his career, which, if all things go well, could be another 13 seasons, I don't see any way they hold him to 3 or less Super Bowls.
So we've known each other a long time, right, Josh?
Yeah.
We've been arguing about sports for what, a decade now?
At least, yeah.
I seem to remember before Patrick Mahomes was in the NFL, you used to always tell me who was the most talented quarterback you've ever seen.
Patrick Mahomes.
Before Patrick Mahomes was in the NFL,
Patrick Mahomes. Yeah, I've always said Patrick Mahomes for the last 10
you used
years.
to tell me Mr. Aaron Rodgers.
It was Aaron Rodgers, yes. I did.
How many Super Bowls does Aaron Rodgers have?
Not a lot.
He has one. How many in the history of the NFL? How many quarterbacks have won more than one Super Bowl? So 2 or more Super Bowls.
Off the top of my head, I actually don't know the answer to
12.
that question. 12?
12. 12 quarterbacks have won 2 Super Bowls. And let me use your own point against you. Quarterback is the most important position in sports. It's rare that a great quarterback doesn't win a Super Bowl. There's a lot of great quarterbacks in the NFL right now who don't have one yet. You're going to tell me they're not going to get one over the next 13 years that Mahomes is playing? If we had this show, we didn't have the technology and we weren't live, but if we had the show back in 1996 and we had the same topic and it's how many Super Bowls would Brett Favre win? You would have said more than 3. He won
No,
one.
I wouldn't have, because Brett Favre sucks.
You might not have, but people would have said more than 3.
And they'd be wrong, because Brett Favre sucks.
He was a 3-time MVP. Fair enough. He was a 3-time MVP, though. Won his first Super Bowl, only one he got. What about in 2001? If I asked you this question about Peyton Manning, you would have told me he would have only won one Super Bowl legit and then one in his last year as a participation trophy. I mean, one of those quarterbacks that has multiple Super Bowls is Eli Manning. Eli Manning has 2 Super Bowls, and he beat Tom Brady twice to do it. It's not a knock on Patrick Mahomes. The fact is, good quarterbacks win Super Bowls. There's a lot of good quarterbacks in the league right now. Patrick Mahomes is a great quarterback, but Tom Brady's the outlier. He's not the standard. And you're saying he's going to win more than 3. Do you know how many quarterbacks have won more than 3? Joe Montana, Troy Aikman has 3. Terry Bradshaw, Tom Brady. That's it. And 3 of those guys played before we were born.
Right. I mean, those are all good points, and that's fair. I think that for him to play as well as he plays, as young as he plays, he's really just starting out. He's only going to get better. And even so far this season, until the Raiders somehow scored 40 points, they haven't had an answer for him yet again. Throw in the fact that they just got Le'Veon Bell, and I think the Chiefs are Super Bowl favorites again. Obviously, it's not
washed up scrub, and you know it, and I know.
He's better than Damian Williams and LaShawn McCoy, who they had last year, and I think that's.
But running backs don't matter, as I defeated you on last episode.
They don't. They're not the end-all be-all, but they help. You know what I mean? They help. How many of those Super Bowls that Troy Aikman won did he have Emmitt Smith for?
All 3.
Okay, so obviously Le'Veon Bell's no Emmitt Smith, but they help. It's never like, oh damn, we lost a Super Bowl because our running back was too good.
I don't understand how you can have this conversation and leave out Nathan Peterman. I mean, that's a competition that Mahomes gonna have to go up against year in and year out, and to expect Patrick Mahomes to constantly come out on top of that matchup, I think that's a bold claim.
That's fair, but also, Josh, explain to me, Russell Wilson has 1, and he has a lot of years left. Lamar Jackson doesn't have 1 yet. He's just starting out. He's younger than Patrick Mahomes. Joe Burrow is a stud. He's just coming out. He's younger than Patrick Mahomes. Doesn't have any yet. Baker Mayfield's starting to show up. He doesn't have 1 yet. Deshaun Watson in Houston's starting to show up. He doesn't have 1 yet. There are plenty of quarterbacks coming up. You said Mahomes is going to play for 13 years. Those quarterbacks right there are going to combine for 10 of those Super Bowls, maybe more. We still have guys coming out of college. Trevor Lawrence, you're going to tell me he's not going to win any? Where do you fit? Where do you find these other 3 Super Bowls in for him to win 4?
Well, it's not about they won't win any. Like I said, if Patrick Mahomes plays 13 more seasons, he's already won 1 Super Bowl.
3 more in 13 years. How many teams have done that in the history of the league? Won 3 Super Bowls in 13 years.
3 teams. 3, yeah. 3.
49ers did it, the Cowboys did it, and the Patriots did it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Like I said, you look at those other quarterbacks. Joe Burrow, I think, has a promising future. That he has done nothing so far. Baker Mayfield has played some of the most mediocre football I've ever seen in my life, and
More coaches in 3 years, though. He's starting to turn it around this year.
And has just now finally started to play competent football. Now that he has an incredible roster put around him. Lamar Jackson, I think he's a solid quarterback. I think he's going to win, during his time. But I think Mahomes is a monumentally more talented quarterback than those guys. I know it's a little early to speak on Burrow and maybe even Jackson.
Peyton Manning was monumentally more talented than his guys at his time, too. So was Brett Favre. So was
Peyton Manning threw more interceptions in one season than anybody had ever thrown in the history of the NFL on the same season that Patrick Mahomes won a Super Bowl.
Did Peyton Manning have the team Patrick Mahomes had?
No, not quite.
Peyton Manning had a team that went 1-15 the year before he was drafted.
Did Peyton win 1 or 2 or 3?
Peyton won 2, and the last one was a participation trophy because he had the greatest defense of all time. Literally the greatest defense of all time.
Yeah.
All right, go ahead and wrap this one up.
To me, I think that so far, I'm going first. Thank you. I think that Patrick Mahomes is a very transcendent talent. We talk about Tom Brady is the greatest quarterback of all time. That's something you and I both agree on. Patrick Mahomes has more physical talent in his right hand than Tom Brady has in his body. And I think that when it's all said and done,
Brady hasn't beaten intangibles, though.
That's true. That's something that you develop over time. And I think Mahomes has already shown a lot of them. Some incredible clutch drives, some incredible clutch wins, game-winning touchdowns, great plays in the moments he needed to make them. The same thing Brady's done his entire career. Patrick Mahomes has never once shown an inability to do that. And so I think that he'll continue to get better. And when it's all said and done, I think Patrick Mahomes, I know it's a big claim, it's a little premature, but I think he could supplant Brady as the greatest quarterback of all time.
So let me put the nail in the coffin of your dumb argument real quick. So how did Patrick Mahomes play in the first 3 quarters of the Super Bowl last year? And I get he won it, and I get he had a fantastic, but how did he play in the first 3 quarters?
Not great.
Not well. And here's the crux of my argument. Getting to the Super Bowl, no quarterback other than Joe Montana is undefeated in the Super Bowl. I think Troy Aikman is too. A lot of great quarterbacks struggle in the Super Bowl because when you have 2 weeks to prepare for a quarterback, it's hard to win that game. So not only is it going to be hard for Patrick Mahomes to get there, it's going to be hard for him to win it when he's there too. Tom Brady has some of the greatest, he had the greatest Super Bowl performance for a quarterback ever in 2017. He lost it. And some of the worst games he played against the Rams, he won it. So just having the monumental talent isn't enough to win the Super Bowl consistently in the National Football League. It's the hardest title to win in sports.
I agree. I think that's true, but I don't think anything you said necessarily proved that Mahomes can't do it. So, I guess we'll see.
I don't think Houston has any worth at all. So.
I think Mahomes is in a fantastic situation. He's got a great team, a fantastic head coach in Andy Reid, a lot of young players around him. He doesn't have people that are going to be moving on unless they leave from free agency, which
Andy Reid is also the same age as Bill Belichick is now, so can't count on him for 13 years.
Probably not, but still, I think it would be super surprising if Mahomes didn't win 3, but also if he didn't win 3, I want to be like, I can't believe that. But to wrap things up, final topic. Go ahead and discuss. This is a good one. Who's the better coach, Nick Saban or Bill Belichick? We can start with Jesse on this one.
I'm gonna kick it to Josh. Take this one first.
All right. So before we get into this, just so it's not misconstrued by either one of us, this isn't about one of them not being a good coach. They're both some of the greatest football coaches to ever do it in history. So nothing said against either coach is a shot to either of them. It's just which one we think narrowly edges the other out for the greatest football coach of all time.
Right, narrowly by a significant margin.
Yeah, we'll see. So to me, I think it's Bill Belichick. I know that when Nick Saban showed up to Alabama, they were not the powerhouse football team that they are now. And they were coming off of some big penalties from some scandals that were going on. So they lost recruiting, big fines, things like that. So he had, to crawl out of a little bit of a doghouse. But the 10 seasons prior to Nick Saban showing up for Alabama, they went 4-7, 7-5, 10-3, 3-8, 7-5, 10-3, 4-9, 6-6, 10-2, 6-7 with 6 bowl appearances. So obviously that's not, number one ranked every single year for 10 years straight Alabama that we know since he took over. But that's not a laughing stock of a team. That's not an absolute joke. And Alabama was one of the first major college programs in the country for football. They've been big for a long time. Many, many, many coaches, I think 6 coaches before Saban got there at Alabama, won a national championship. It's not like he took this tiny little D3 school and turned them into the best team in the country versus Bill Belichick, who was able to make some pretty incredible changes to a program. Just to throw out some more numbers, just because I have them here. I lost them on my sheet of paper. Here we go. So from the inception of the Patriots in 1960 through 1984, so 24 years, the Patriots made the playoffs 4 times. They had 12 losing seasons in that time. They made a Super Bowl in 85, but they got blown out 46-10. Then they made the playoffs once in the next 9 years, going a combined 52-91, with 5 consecutive double-digit losses from 89 to 93. Then they ended up making the playoffs 4 times in the mid-90s with 1 Super Bowl appearance that they lost again. And then they ended up missing the playoffs twice before Bill Belichick got there. Since he's been there, they've made the playoffs 16 out of 19 times. One of the 3 times they missed it was his first season coaching, and the other time was after Tom Brady blew out his knee in week 2, and they had Matt Castle trying to lead them all the way to the Super Bowl, which, by the way, that season they went 11-5 and became one of 2 teams in NFL history to not make the playoffs at 11-5. The only other one was the Broncos, who played at a time when only 5 teams got to make the playoffs in a conference, so it was way easier to miss the playoffs anyway. He's turned a football team that was a legitimate laughingstock in its league into the greatest sports dynasty of all time, and I don't think there's any refuting that.
Okay, so let me refute it. Here, let me throw some stats back at you.
You can try.
Let me throw some stats back at you.
Go for it.
Something you kind of glossed over there quickly. He missed the playoffs in his first season with the Patriots and in 2008 with the Patriots. What was the common denominator in those 2 seasons?
Tom Brady.
No Tom Brady. You said, oh, they went 11-5. That team went 19-0 before losing the Super Bowl with Tom Brady. That team was stacked to the brim, and Tom Brady, it took a miracle for him to lose a single game with that team. Matt Castle lost 5 games with that team. Matt Castle was a bad quarterback, but he had some good years in Chiefs. He was a decent quarterback. Read to me, you left out both of those coaches, if I'm not mistaken, coached at places before Alabama and the Patriots, didn't they? You seem to have glossed over what happened when Nick Saban coached the team he coached right before the Patriots, or right before Alabama, excuse me. He won the national championship. He won the national championship with LSU. What happened? He built that program that had been struggling through the 90s. They hadn't won a championship since 1950 or 60 or whatever, and he won a championship in 2003 with LSU. What happened when Bill Belichick coached the Cleveland Browns for 5 years? They had 1 winning season. 1. You could say he didn't have talent. They traded, I can't remember the quarterback's name off the top of my head, in the middle of this 95 season, who went on to win the Super Bowl with the team they traded him to. He wasn't a great quarterback. He had talent. Bill Belichick's never done anything without Tom Brady. Nick Saban has had 4 different quarterbacks to win a national title with him. Nick Saban, before he won a title with LSU, he coached Michigan State, who had been struggling for a decade, won them 2 10-win seasons in 4 years. Nick Saban went on to win a championship at LSU. He came to Alabama. You're saying Alabama you read off 16 years of their records or whatever. Alabama's a premier football program. Winning less than 10 games with Alabama is not acceptable. That was a terrible team. Being bowl eligible is winning 6 half-year games. That's not impressive at all. Winning the Chick-fil-A Bowl is not impressive. He built the greatest dynasty in sports isn't the New England Patriots. It's Alabama Crimson Tide. And the reason is those players turn over every 3 to 4 years. He's winning titles with players who were in elementary school when he won his first title with the Alabama in 2009, when Mark Ingram was his quarterback, was his running back. I don't even think Mark Ingram's in the league anymore unless he's on a practice squad somewhere.
Mark Ingram is a major contributing running back for the Baltimore Ravens.
There you go, whatever. But Bill Belichick never won a single championship that did not involve Tom Brady. And I get the first three. He had great defenses that he didn't build, by the way. He inherited them from Bill Parcells, the greatest defensive coach ever, some say. But who led the game-winning drives in all those Super Bowls? All three of them was Tom Brady. That was the common denominator for all those Super Bowls. He didn't do anything with the Browns. He didn't do anything with he was the defensive coordinator. He was a great defensive coordinator. He doesn't do anything with the offense. He's had 5 different offensive coordinators with the Patriots. Tom Brady's been the common denominator.
I mean, Tom Brady's the greatest quarterback to ever play until Patrick Mahomes wins 4 or more Super Bowls, and then
what great quarterback has Nick Saban ever had? Ever.
It's
McElroy, AJ McCarron.
I think it's a little bit different.
Yeah, Tua.
With the surrounding talent around quarterbacks, and it's a little bit tougher with college versus the NFL, because with college you're relying on recruiting for the guys to come in, and Alabama, he really built that team up in the trenches is where he started, where most good coaches start. You start in the trenches, you build the line, you get good running backs, you build the running game, and then they became this powerhouse running team where it seemed like every single year whoever was running the football for Alabama was going to the NFL. If you're a premier quarterback going into college, based on the way that Saban had built the team, as great of a team as it was, it's one of the best sports dynasties ever. If you want to shine as a quarterback, you don't go to Alabama. So that's partly why he never had.
How many times did Tua go to the Heisman ceremony in New York?
One more time, I didn't hear you.
How many times did Tua end up at the Heisman ceremony in New York?
Tua ended up as one of his better quarterbacks. He ended up as one of his better quarterbacks, and he was one to go to Alabama. But, I mean, the fact that Saban's talent at quarterback has been limited his entire time at Alabama, I think is pretty telling of the fact that high talent quarterbacks don't go to Alabama. They know they're just going to hand the ball off the whole game. And arguments could be made for how good Tua is or how good the team around Tua was. And obviously
3 first-round wide receivers. I think it's pretty cut and dry there.
Yeah, he had a lot of talent around him. How many offensive linemen went to the NFL, running backs, the defense.
But that's a point to Nick Saban. Those kids aren't coming into Alabama as NFL-ready players. He's producing them. Alabama wasn't an NFL just farm before Nick Saban got there. Now it's a farm system. Every player on Alabama is going to the league. It's a joke how good he built that team. Bill Belichick was the first coach to ever be given full football privileges over a team. He was the coach and the GM since day one with the Patriots. He's built some truly terrible offenses that Tom Brady dragged to the playoffs.
GM, Bill Belichick is bad.
It's bad. That's
we'll
true.
Agree there. And that's why we're talking about as a coach.
That's fair,
not
yeah.
As a GM. Because if we're talking about GM, I'm with you. Very much with you. And Belichick has put some puzzlingly bad teams together, but to still perform so well with those teams. It wasn't just Tom Brady dragging a crappy offense, scoring 60 points a game because they were giving up 58. I mean, how many years has Bill Belichick had a top 5 defense since he's been coaching? With some years there was some talent, some years not so much, but no matter what, you could always count on the Patriots defense being up there at the top. And I know Tom Brady's time of possession, low turnovers, things like that really helped the defense out a lot, but there's no denying the Patriots defense has always been great. Yeah, the offense he puts
bottom 5 defenses in his career as well. In 2011, in 2013, and in 2015, he had bottom 5 defenses in terms of total yardage. Points weren't there because Brady was controlling the ball, like you said, but he's put some stinkers up there in defense too. And evaluating talent, I mean, signing the talent is one thing as a GM. Evaluating talent is still a coach's job.
Yeah, and that's true to an extent. I think it's more so as a college coach than an NFL coach. Because again, when in the NFL, you start getting into the GM side of things, and That's where I'm drawing the line because there's no argument to be had there. We agree.
All right. Start wrapping this one up. All right.
So to me, again, Saban's one of the greatest coaches to ever coach. And I think he did great things before he got to Alabama, and we talked about that. And he did good things to get Alabama rolling. Roll Tide. But once he started getting that program, once he started getting that program rolling like he did, every high-level football player coming out of high school who doesn't throw a ball wanted to go to Alabama. I mean, since he's been there, Nick Saban has sent 99 players to the NFL, 33 of them in the first round. And a lot of that has to do with him, but not all of it. A lot of it is guys want to go to Alabama.
But they didn't before him.
And they didn't before him. I agree. But once he got that ball rolling, it became much easier to keep the ball rolling. The ball kind of rolls itself versus Bill Belichick, where at a higher level of play against better talent and better coaches, and that's a big key. The coaches Bill Belichick are going against were way better than the coaches Saban's going against for the most part. To keep that ball rolling where you continuously have to force it to keep rolling, it doesn't just roll itself like at Alabama. I think it's more impressive what Belichick has done.
So I don't think that's fair at all, what you're saying about Nick Saban getting the ball rolling, because maintaining success as a college coach is way harder than maintaining success as an NFL coach, because with the NFL, you can have the same players for 10 years. In college, it's 3 years and they're gone, especially if they're good. If they're good, it might be 2 if they redshirt their first year. So the only other coach that's comparable that's had as much success for as long as him is Dabo Swinney in Clemson. No other college coach in the last half a century has been able to maintain success as long as Nick Saban. But besides the point, Bill Belichick has only ever had success in one system with one player. Nick Saban had success. He was a fantastic coach at Michigan State, a national champion at LSU, and then built the greatest dynasty in sports at Alabama. Bill Belichick was a failure with the Browns. He was a failure. He didn't actually fail with the Jets. He was only their coach for 2 days. But he got to the Patriots. He didn't do well in his first year, and then Tom Brady shows up. He's got all the intangibles. He might not be the most talented quarterback, but he had some great defenses. The rest is history. Nick Saban did it without any great quarterbacks. He built it from the ground up, and he's done it with 3 different teams.
That's fair. I disagree, but Nick Saban, if you see this, I think you're a great coach. I'm sorry for everything I said.
Bill Belichick, if you see this, I think you're a terrible GM.
I think it's unfair to discredit Bill Belichick for having Tom Brady when he's the man that drafted Tom Brady. But I think it goes as simple as this for me. What happened when Nick Saban went to the Miami Dolphins and had to scramble back to the NCAA?
We can talk about what happened when he went to the Dolphins. He inherited a terrible team and improved their win total all 3 years he was there.
And scrambled on back to the NCAA.
He quit because he prefers coaching college, but he increased their win total all 3 years he was there.
I think Bill Belichick's the greatest football mind as a head coach of a football team right now or in history.
You're wrong.
Thank you. I think that'll wrap it up for us, guys. Thanks for watching. Let us know any topics you want to see us debate. If you have any suggestions, who'd you agree with? Who'd you not agree with? What did we leave out?
Why do you agree with me?
Why do you want to see more of me? Go ahead and leave that comment below as well, and we'll see you guys next time. Thanks for watching.
See you guys.